Hi, I'm Francine Brokaw. Welcome to Beyond the Red Carpet. Today I am really excited because I have an Academy Award winning filmmaker, Mr. Chuck Workman here, who's going to talk about his experiences in Hollywood and his views on where Hollywood's at now, where it might be going, where he would like it to go. And I have a very special treat for everybody. At the end of this interview, you're going to see Precious Images, his Academy Award winning short film in its entirety. So stay tuned for that. Welcome, Chuck.
Oh, thanks very much.
This is exciting.
Nice to be here.
Precious Images, besides being the Academy Award winning short, about 30 years ago?
Yeah.
10 years ago, you were mentioning, it was selected by the Library of Congress. Can you explain what they selected it for?
Yeah, they pick about 10 films every year to preserve, but really it's just a list. But it's you know, it's a great honor to be on the list. It's a list of films that they feel should not be thrown away and should be preserved somehow, and they'll help you preserve them if you don't do it. And it's usually classic movies, but sometimes they take shorts or educational films or documentaries. So they took this short, and it was great.
Well, this short is fabulous because there's so much in it in a short 7 minutes that you just look and you think, oh my gosh, you know, it brings back so many memories. You can never get tired of watching it.
Yeah, people will, the way it is set up is it's about 450 different clips of famous Hollywood movies in honor of the 50th anniversary of the Directors Guild, the Film Directors Union. And I just kept adding films that I wanted to have in it. And so it got to be such a long list that I had to cut it very short. So I had to find ways to kind of move from one to another and use the music and everything. And so people just sit back and they watch it, and they see lots of movies that they suddenly remember, and then it's gone immediately, and they go to the next one. And it's been around all these years, and people seem to like it and want to see it again and again.
When I was watching it, I saw movies that I hadn't seen in a long time and thinking, oh, I got to go back and see that movie.
People do that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much in there. It's just great. But it was made 30 years ago, so
no, but
you have to make another. Yeah,
it was updated.
It was.
Yeah, about 10 years later, it was updated, and we put in Schindler's List, and we put in other famous movies that you know, felt.
You have to continually update it because it's fabulous. I mean, it's a piece of Hollywood.
You can update it.
Thank you.
I'm done updating, unless someone wants to pay me.
You also won a Cable Ace Award. Do you remember for the first 100 years?
Right. That was a feature film. That wasn't the short. It was a short called. With a similar title. That was a short that HBO asked me to do. Right. That was, a feature that was basically a history of the movies, and with a lot of interviews and a lot of clips. And they ran it. It's still around, you know, that people, it's hard to see. So if anybody writes you and said, where can I see that, they'll have to find it. But I think they can find it on YouTube. But it was 90 minutes long, and
well, we're not showing that today. But
no.
We can't do it. But no, it's just your collages just evoke so much emotion in people. You've done some on what was it, Bugs Bunny?
I did Bugs Bunny, and then it got me a very good gig with Michael Jackson, who looked at all my films. Yes, he looked at all my films. And he wanted to, and he just looks around. He likes to hire people to work on his videos. And he loved, you know, he told me that of all my films, he liked Bugs Bunny the best. It was a 5-minute or 3-minute or something anniversary of Bugs Bunny that I did for Warner Brothers. And we just had every Bugs Bunny cartoon possible to use. And I ended up using a lot of clips, and he liked it.
I know you want to talk about documentaries, but I have a question for you. What are your feelings on the new docudramas that are out on television and film? Like, I'm thinking the last one I saw was Chappaquiddick. What do you think the value of that is?
Oh, they've had those for years and
Yeah,
years. That's not very new. I think if they're well done, I mean, you know, you use history going back to Shakespeare and before, you know, that they use actual historical things and dramatize them in certain ways. A lot of it has to do with the casting. Sometimes you're comfortable with who's playing John Kennedy or who's playing whoever is in the story, and you learn something. People like to learn some facts about something, so they'll watch it. Problem sometimes is that they're not always accurate.
That's what I'm trying to get at is people watch that and they think that it's all fact, but it isn't, because nobody was there to be able to tell you what happened in certain instances. So
right.
I think in a way they could be damaging, but to history, but in a way they're
well,
they bring
sometimes the
up.
family objects, you know, you have that problem. But this happens in books too, where someone will write a history, even a nonfiction history, and people object, that's wrong, that's you shouldn't have done that. So I do a lot of them. I try to be as accurate as possible, but sometimes you have to kind of play with a little bit. I heard an interview today about a documentary maker that said that you would never get permission from another documentary maker to make that person's life because they know you lie. I disagree with that, but still, you do have to make little kind of adjustments sometimes, but you want to do it as honestly as possible, as truthfully as possible. Michael Moore, when he made Roger and Me, which was probably the largest grossing documentary of all time, or was at the time, switched around chronology a little bit. And some of the people, I was on the Oscar committee that year, and some of the people on that committee who would pick the nominees really got annoyed by this. They said he should never have done that. And it was, now we look back and it was nothing. But at the time, it became a big deal, and he wasn't nominated. His film wasn't nominated for an Oscar. Probably
Because
most popular, because he changed chronology. He put the cart before the horse in a certain way. So you try and do as much as you can. Sometimes you just make a mistake, or you have it wrong, or it's historically wrong. So you do the best you can to make it accurate.
And documentaries are your forte, right?
That's what I've been doing mostly. I do a lot of short montages.
I love those. I really do. You got to search him out. You've got to search out all of his, because they are really very interesting and so emotional, because there's so much impacted in such a short period of time.
Yeah, you have to figure out what the subtext is, what story you're telling, even with these little short things. So even if you're doing the history of Bugs Bunny, you have to figure out what am I saying about Bugs Bunny that makes it, that will be a spine for this thing, that will hold it up. So you can't just have a bunch of shots that look okay, which you see on TV all the time, but you have to really figure out what's underneath everything.
So a lot of thinking goes into what to put where and how to...
Tremendous, and a lot of changing things around. What you see mostly on television is something that an editor has an afternoon to do. I mean, you know, on any channel. In my case, I'm lucky. I have as much time as I want usually, and so I can really experiment and really look at it. I'm not always right, but at least I have a shot at getting it right.
What when you were growing up, was filmmaking in your idea of what you wanted to do with your life?
I think so. I wanted to be a writer, or I wanted to be in theater. I'm still in theater. I'm writing a play right now that I hope is somebody will see in the fall. But
let us know where it's going to be, and we can plug it.
I will. I know they're going to read it in Albuquerque, and I know it'll be somewhere in LA, but who knows? You know, we're still working on it. But I liked movies. I went to the movies, and like most kids, I probably went more than most kids. But I never thought that there were actual people who made these movies. You know,
surprising.
It was surprising. Then I started to learn more about film, especially when European films came in. And by the time I caught up to them, I'm talking about Fellini and Bergman and Truffaut, and where you could kind of understand what they were doing and how to do it, that it wasn't some Hollywood thing with movie stars. It was something that was closer to the plays I was interested in, and the theater and the writing that I was interested in. So I started going to them, and then that's sort of when I moved into filmmaking. And I still hope that my films are, in that world and not necessarily in the mass media Hollywood world, although I lived a part of that for many, many years.
I heard Ben Mankiewicz from Turner Classics the other day saying that the old Hollywood had to rely on good storytelling because they didn't have the technology, they didn't know how to blow up buildings, they didn't have all this effects. Do you feel that the technology is taking the movies into a less entertaining, less stories involved in it, more technology, more blowing up things, more effects?
Well, those blow-up films still have, stories. Every Hollywood film has a story that usually a formulaic story. Even the very good ones are formula to some extent because they have to attract as many people to it as possible. So it's like a fast food restaurant wants everybody to come. Whereas a high-end restaurant somewhere else is happy enough if the right people come. I'm not saying that there should be a snobbery attached to it, but sometimes you don't want to go for that mass audience. You want to go for a particular kind of audience, and so I'm a category myself. I'm an older, educated viewer, so I'll go see The Big Sick, or I'll go see something like that. That doesn't mean I won't go see the new Star Wars movie, but I am more interested in a smarter movie, Norman, if you remember, with Richard Gere. Hard to find, but you can find it if you look.
They are few and far between now.
Yeah,
and they really are.
And because they don't want me. I mean, they do in a way. They do want older viewers, I think, but they don't necessarily make a great deal of money on those films.
I think they go for the younger, quote unquote, hip.
Hip or not hip,
but
they could
the
be
younger crowd
staggering drunk from beer. They're still going to go watch those movies. They're going to go watch some action movie, and now animated movies are very big with younger kids. So
and
whole
older
families.
kids. I mean, I think I know a lot of seniors that loved Frozen. Yeah, so I think
I didn't get to see that one, but
you have to.
my granddaughter sings the song. So.
Yes.
No, I don't see that. But I'm saying that there are different audiences. But what has happened is the Hollywood has to attract as many people as possible. That's the way it works. So if you just think about it, again, to come back to what I said, it's McDonald's. It's fast food, and there's more to life than fast food, and there's much more to cinema, to films, than what we get from Hollywood. I worked on 20 Oscar shows, so as I say, I'm very much part of that world. But I can also say that that's not the best part of cinema. The best part of cinema is, Francis Ford Coppola said, the best filmmaker in 10 years will be a young girl from Chicago. And he was probably right. I don't know who that girl is, but there's no question that it's somebody that is not necessarily in the mainstream. One of the problems for filmmakers is that it's so seductive that the money and just the exposure and the ability to have all this technology at your disposal, that you end up making some very interesting little film for yourself, the first one, and then you suddenly become a Hollywood person. And this happens over and over again. And it's very hard to resist. I was never a big fan of the Oscars, although, as I say, I did 21 shows, and I won one. So I was very much involved in it. And some of the people that work on the shows in those days, and not even that far long ago, would get these big baskets of presents.
Yes.
a trip to Hawaii, a trip to New Zealand, a
Amazing
$7,000
what they
bed.
get,
You
yes.
can't believe what they would send you. And I would bring the basket home, and all my family would come around and say, I want that, I want that. And so it's very seductive. Not just that, but it's great to have your name mentioned but you have to kind of say, okay, that's one kind of my work, but the other kind of my work should be more serious, and it doesn't have to be sad, it doesn't have to be over dramatic, but it shouldn't be melodramatic. It shouldn't be obvious and formulaic. And
Well, those swag bags are amazing. I've seen lists of what they give out to the presenters and to everything. It was why do they do that?
It's great. Well, who knows why they do it? I didn't care. I didn't ask.
Yeah,
I just wanted it. And after a while, my kids got so interested in when is Dad going to come home with the bag? You know, it was actually a monster basket that we still have.
Wow.
A couple of them, and yeah, we still. Clothes anyway. I won't bore you with.
No, I've been to pre-Oscar swag area. You know, where you go around into different booths and they give everybody.
They give you that.
They didn't give me because I wasn't nominated, but I'm looking at what they get, and it's just astounding.
Yeah, it's great.
The expense they
then
pay.
The IRS said we have to tax this, so the Academy suddenly came back and they charged everybody a little bit, not a lot, for some of the stuff as if it were part of your fee. So you had to pay a little tax, but it was still worth it. You know.
No, I'll bet. I've if we could tell you everything that these people have gotten, oh my gosh, you would be surprised. Okay, you wanted to talk about the new documentaries. You said when we were preparing for this.
Oh right, yeah. I think that what's happened, if I could just give like a few examples.
Sure.
There's one on Mr. Rogers out now. There's one
Excellent.
on Ruth Bader Ginsburg out now. There was one on TV about the New York Times and what happened. There were very audience-friendly documentaries. So they're not something with a narration talking about poor kids in Africa. They still make them and they're worthy. Or about some political problem, or about some, something that is very serious, that has to be very carefully explained. Now, the documentary I think since 2001, since 9/11, when kind of things changed politically in terms of what we wanted politically. We wanted to really see what was going on. And I think that since then, the movies have become much more like, documentary movies have become much more like narrative movies, more like feature films, in the shape of them, in the way they're structured, in how you hold back. There's a new film about 3 triplets. It's called Triplets.
I haven't heard of that one. Okay.
It just came out, and it'll be out soon. It's got a lot of talk, and it has revealing things that happen about these triplets, that you know that they're triplets and that they didn't know each other and then they come together, but then all these things happen in the second half that are revealed of the film. And that's more or less how a lot of documentaries are set up this way. They don't tell you everything in the beginning. They kind of tell the story in the same way that a feature film would tell the story. They're also very polished, where they used to be more rough. They use original music. They don't use narrators necessarily, which a narrator kind of distances you, tells you what you're seeing, like a sportscaster. They don't do that. You kind of pull it out of the story. So that has changed, and that's great for filmmakers, I think, because you get to, make a film. I used the word cinema before, as opposed to just a movie that anybody would kind of fall into or watch on TV, where you can actually use interesting techniques, whether it's montage or whether it's a certain kind of photography or how you structure things in a documentary, in a nonfiction, and at the same time be able to discover things while you're shooting it, which is something you don't do necessarily in a narrative film. It's all scripted. Everybody knows what's going to happen.
Well, I'm going to pick your brain here for just a minute. As far as the classic movies, what do you consider your top one or two classic films?
In American films, I like very much the films of Orson Welles. I made a film called Magician about Orson Welles.
I saw that.
Check it out.
Very good.
Thank you. And I love Orson Welles, and any of his films are pretty good. His later films are kind of thought of as failures. They're far from it. And then I like Stanley Kubrick a lot, and I like 2001: A Space Odyssey and other films of his. And I like the director Robert Altman a lot, who did Nashville and McCabe and Mrs. Miller and many wonderful films. So those are the three, for me, the three American filmmakers that I seem to like the best. That doesn't mean I don't like a lot of others, but I do like them. I mean, I like also certain Hollywood films like Meet Me in St. Louis, Vincent Minnelli's film with Judy Garland. Just a beautiful, beautiful film.
Who doesn't like that? Seriously.
Yeah.
I'm a musical person. I love musicals. I love the old musicals. The new ones, not so much, but some of them are okay.
Yeah, it was my first job in Hollywood. Was MGM was making a film with Petula Clark on Goodbye, Mr. Chips.
Oh, yes.
A musical. So I was very young, but I was working for a company that helped promote these movies. So I was in New York at the time. They sent me to Hollywood, and they said, no one's ever done this before. This is before That's Entertainment, a year or two before. Look at all the musicals, and let's do a kind of a film about all musicals building up to the great Petula Clark and well, you know the answer. I mean, you couldn't do it, but at the same time, I was able to sit at MGM in my own screening room. It was absolutely amazing. And I was like 23 or 4, and watch all these musicals. I would just order up whatever one I wanted.
I'm jealous.
It was fun. And I had always liked musicals, even before. My grandmother used to take me to the movies, and she only liked musicals. She said, oh, no, you don't want to see anybody's troubles. These are very nice films. You know, there are still people that think that.
Well, thank you so much for coming by. I'm sure the viewers got a lot out of this. And I want everybody to stay tuned, because when we come back, we're going to show the Academy Award-winning short, Precious Images, in its entirety. So stay tuned for that, and thank you, Chuck.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was great.
Okay, we'll see you next time.
You must remember this, a kiss is just a kiss.
A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time just goes by.
What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again. I'm laughing at clouds so dark up above. The sun's in my heart and I'm ready for love. Let the stormy clouds chase everyone from the place. Come on with the rain, I've a smile on my face. I'll walk down the lane with a happy refrain, just singing in the rain.
This is Mrs. Norman May.